My younger brother, Caleb, measures a man's worth by the speed of his car and the prestige of his business card. I measure it by the straightness of a stud wall and the satisfaction in a client's eyes when they walk into a finished room for the first time. He left our small Ohio town in his rearview mirror the second he got his business degree and never looked back. I stayed. 10 years ago, when our father passed away suddenly from a heart attack, I was halfway through an architecture scholarship at a top university. I had my own dreams of designing soaring, beautiful buildings. But our dad's legacy, Evans & Son Construction, was more than just a business. It was the heart of our town, a company built on his reputation for quality and an honest handshake. It was a legacy I couldn't let die. So I came home. To my mother, Laura, my choice was a profound disappointment. After Dad was gone, she became entranced by Caleb's new world of tech startups and quarterly earnings reports. His life in the city, with its sleek condos and talk of disruption, seemed so much more exciting than the familiar, dusty world of construction I now inhabited. Caleb's success was her new status symbol. My sacrifice was a source of quiet, constant shame. I remember one Sunday dinner about a year after I took over the company. Caleb had driven in from the city in a brand new, metallic blue sports car. My mother couldn't stop talking about it. "It's just so successful, isn't it?" she'd gushed, looking at the car through the dining room window. "Caleb is really making a name for himself out there." Later, as I was washing the dishes, she came into the kitchen and looked at my hands, which were calloused and perpetually stained with wood varnish. She sighed, that soft, disappointed sound that had become the soundtrack to my life. "Oh, Eli," she said, her voice full of a pity that stung more than any criticism. "Your hands are always so dirty. I do worry about you. All that potential just to stay here in this small town, playing with hammers." That was how she saw it. Caleb, who sold software no one in our town understood, was making a name for himself. Me, who was keeping my father's legacy alive, providing jobs for a dozen local families, and building the very homes our community lived in, was playing with hammers. She didn't see the pride in my work, the honor in continuing what my father had started. She only saw the son who had stayed behind, the one who had chosen duty over ambition, the one who had, in her eyes, failed. I had traded my future for my family's past, and it was a trade they would never let me forget. The phone call that set everything in motion came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was on a job site, covered in a fine layer of drywall dust, when my phone buzzed with Caleb's name. I almost let it go to voicemail. My brother rarely called unless he had news to brag about or needed to ask for a favor disguised as a demand. I answered on the third ring. "Eli, listen up, I'm in the middle of something huge," he said, his voice fast and crackling with the self-important energy he always had when a big deal was on the line. "I'm hosting a dinner on Saturday, small, very exclusive, at the Crest." The Crest was one of those new, astronomically expensive restaurants in the city that served foam on a slate tile and called it an appetizer. It was a world away from the diners and pubs I frequented. "Okay," I said slowly. "Sounds nice." "It's not just nice, Eli, it's critical," he snapped, his patience already wearing thin. "I'm hosting a potential client, Mr. Sterling, the Alistair Sterling." He said the name with the kind of reverence most people reserve for saints. "He's breaking ground on that massive new waterfront development, and my company is this close." I could hear him pinching his fingers together over the phone. "To landing the 7-figure contract to outfit the entire project with our smart home technology. This could be the deal that makes my career. Everything has to be perfect." I knew where this was going. A knot of familiar dread tightened in my stomach. "Anyway," he continued, "Mom's coming, of course, and she thinks it's important for you to be there too. You know, to present a united family front. Show Sterling we come from a stable, supportive family." There it was. Not an invitation to celebrate his potential success, but a summons to play a role in his performance. "So, I need you there," he said, his voice shifting into full-on directive mode. 7 p.m. Saturday. And Eli, he paused, and I could hear the cringe in his voice. "For God's sake, wear a real suit, not your Sunday church blazer, and no work boots. Can you just, for one night, try to look like you belong in a place like that?" The question hung in the air, a casual, brutal summary of everything he and my mother thought of me. I wasn't a brother to be included. I was a potential embarrassment to be managed. He wasn't asking me to share in his success. He was asking me to not screw it up. "I'll check my schedule, Caleb," I said, my voice flat. "Check your schedule?" he scoffed. "What, you got a hot date to install some cabinets? Just be there, Eli. It's important." He hung up before I could reply. I stood there on the noisy job site, the phone still pressed to my ear. I was a prop. The rustic, hard-working brother, a sentimental piece of stage dressing to make Caleb's sleek, modern success look even more impressive. My first instinct was to call him back and tell him exactly where he could put his dinner invitation. But then I thought of my dad. He had built his company on a foundation of integrity and quality, the very things men like Alastair Sterling, men from an older generation of builders, were known to respect. A part of me, a part that still felt fiercely protective of my father's name, decided to go. Not for Caleb, but for him. "I don't want to go," I told my girlfriend Sarah that night as we sat in our small, comfortable living room. "It's the same old story, just with more expensive wine. I'll be the family prop, the blue-collar footnote they used to make Caleb's success seem even more impressive." Sarah, who had witnessed my family's particular brand of cruelty more than once, just listened. "Then don't," she said simply. "You don't owe them your peace of mind, Eli." She was right, of course. I didn't owe them anything. But as I thought about it more, I realized my hesitation wasn't just about avoiding a night of condescension. It was about something deeper. It was about my father. After the phone call with Caleb, I found myself walking out to my garage, the same garage where my dad and I had spent countless hours working on his old Mustang. I ran my hand over the cool metal of the hood and thought back to the weeks after he died. I was 22 years old, holding an acceptance letter and a full scholarship to one of the best architecture programs in the country. My future was a blueprint, drawn and ready to be built. But my father's company, his life's work, was on the verge of collapse. The bank was circling. His longtime employees, men who had known me since I was a boy, were terrified of losing their jobs, and my mother was lost in a fog of grief. Caleb was away at business school, already building his own separate life. Someone had to steer the ship. Someone had to honor the name, Evans & Son, painted on the side of our work trucks. It wasn't a sacrifice I made because I couldn't do anything else. It was a choice I made because in that moment, I was the only one who could. I chose to trade my dream for his legacy. I chose to stay home to take care of our mother, to ensure his employees had a paycheck, to make sure the name Evans in our town continued to mean quality, integrity, and a promise kept. I never regretted that choice. There was an honor in it, a satisfaction in finishing a project on time and under budget, in providing a good living for my crew, in seeing a family move into a home we had built with our own hands. My family, however, only saw the dream I had given up, not the legacy I had preserved. They saw the sawdust on my clothes, not the sturdy roof over their own heads that my company's success helped maintain. "I'm going to go," I told Sarah finally, a new resolve settling in my chest. She looked at me, a question in her eyes. "Not for Caleb," I explained, "and not for my mother. I'm going for my dad. Evans & Son Construction belongs in a room with a man like Alastair Sterling. My dad's legacy, his reputation for integrity and quality, deserves that respect, even if his own family refuses to give it. I won't let Caleb be the only version of an Evans son in that room." I wasn't going to the dinner as a prop anymore. I was going as a representative. I would be a quiet ambassador for a different kind of success, the kind built on stock options and flashy tech, but on a foundation of honor, hard work, and a good name. 2 years passed. I became a sous chef at Le Chien, Chef Antoine's trusted second-in-command. I moved in with Chloe, our small apartment filled with the smell of old books and good wine. My life was my own, built on hard work and a passion my family refused to acknowledge. The call came on a Tuesday. It was my mother. "Liam, I have wonderful news," she announced, her voice filled with a rare, genuine excitement. "Your brother has been awarded the Kellerman Grant for his research in neuroplasticity. The university is holding a formal gala to honor him in 3 weeks." She paused. "We would like you to be there." The invitation felt like an olive branch, and despite my better judgment, a flicker of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe things had changed. Maybe they were finally ready to see me as part of the family again. I told Chloe I had to go. I want to be there for Julian, I explained. It's a huge achievement. She understood, even as she looked at me with worried eyes. I requested the night off, something almost unheard of for a sous chef, and to my surprise, Chef Antoine granted it. Go, he said. Family is family, even when they are fools. The night of the gala, my family gathered for a pre-event dinner at a stuffy, Michelin-starred restaurant near the university, my mother's choice. The conversation was entirely about Julian's genius, his brilliant future, the importance of his work. I congratulated my brother sincerely, and he gave me a distracted, condescending smile. Thanks, Liam. It's hard to explain the complexities, but it's a big deal. As the meal progressed, my mother turned to me, her fork resting on her plate. Liam, darling, she said, her voice low and conspiratorial. At the gala tonight, you'll be meeting many of my colleagues from the university, the dean, the provost. When they ask what you do, perhaps it would be better to just say you're in hospitality. It sounds a bit more polished than cook. The word hung in the air, a familiar insult dressed up in a velvet glove. Mom, I'm a sous chef at one of the best restaurants in the city, I said, my voice quiet. Yes, of course, dear, she replied, patting my hand. And we're very proud of your hard work. It's just for tonight, to simplify things. Julian nodded in agreement. She's right, Liam. It just makes the conversation easier. No need to get into the whole restaurant business. I felt that old familiar shame wash over me, the feeling of being something to be managed, a problem to be solved. As we were preparing to leave for the main event, my mother pulled me aside near the coat check. Her smile was gone, replaced by a cool, appraising look. Liam, I've been thinking, she said, her voice firm. On second thought, perhaps it's best you don't attend the ceremony itself. I stared at her, confused. What? Why? This is a very important night for Julian, she explained, her gaze unflinching. It's an academic event, for professionals, for doctors and academics who understand the significance of this award. Your presence, well, it would just be confusing for our colleagues. It would raise questions we don't need to answer tonight. It's better this way. There it was. The final, unequivocal rejection. I was not just a disappointment. I was an embarrassment, a confusing data point that would disrupt the pristine narrative of her perfect academic family. She was disowning me from their public life. I looked at my mother, at the woman who had taught me to read, and for the first time, I didn't see my mom. I saw a stranger, a woman so blinded by her own narrow definition of success that she was willing to shatter her own son's heart to protect her image. The hope I had foolishly allowed to flicker inside me died completely. There was nothing left to fight for. I understand, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. I didn't wait for her reply. I turned, walked out of the restaurant, and didn't look back. I left them to their world of accolades and prestige. I didn't go home. I went back to the only place that felt like home anymore, the kitchen. I walked into the heat and the chaos of Le Chien, changed into my chef's whites, and got to work. The familiar weight of a knife in my hand, a more profound comfort than my own family had ever been. The battle was finally over. I had lost. But as I seared a piece of fish in a screaming hot pan, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I had also been set free. Dinner was an elaborate, multi-course affair. I was seated between my father and the wife of one of Chloe's colleagues, a woman whose name I immediately forgot. The conversation flowed around me, a river of talk about interest rates, vacation homes in Aspen, and the merits of a particular private school. I remained in my role as observer, eating my food silently, a ghost at the feast. My parents, seated near the head of the table, directed all their questions to Chloe, their pride in her radiating with almost physical warmth. They were in their element, their daughter holding court, with a billionaire at the table as the ultimate validation of their family's success. The moment I had been dreading arrived with the dessert course. The woman beside me, perhaps trying to be polite after an hour of ignoring me, turned with a bright, curious smile. We've heard so much about Chloe's incredible career, she said. Maya, what about you? What field are you in? The question, though innocent, made the table fall quiet for a beat. All eyes turned to me. I felt a familiar heat creep up my neck. I opened my mouth to deliver my vague, safe line about being a freelance digital artist. But before I could speak, Chloe let out a loud, theatrical laugh that drew every last bit of attention in the room. "Oh, you don't have to be so modest, Maya. Tell them," she said, her tone dripping with condescending encouragement. She leaned forward, a conspiratorial smirk on her face. She was enjoying this. She was going to answer for me. "My sister is one of the most dedicated people I know," Chloe began, her voice full of false admiration. "She spends 12, sometimes 14 hours a day focused on her work. She's actually one of the top-ranked players in the world." She paused, letting the statement hang in the air before delivering the punchline. "At her favorite video game, she's practically a professional." A few of Chloe's sycophantic friends tittered. My mother's smile became a tight, pained line. My father cleared his throat and took a sudden, deep interest in his tiramisu. Chloe, however, was just warming up. "It's true," she insisted, as if I were a fascinating science experiment. "While I'm out here in the real world, navigating the complexities of the multi-million-dollar luxury real estate market, my little sister is at home, slaying digital dragons. It's a different kind of market, I suppose." She looked around the table, her eyes sparkling with malice. "But hey, every family needs one, right? The creative one. The dreamer." The way she said dreamer made it sound synonymous with loser. It was a public execution, delivered with a smile. She had taken my life, my passion, the world I had poured my heart and soul into, and reduced it to a childish caricature for the amusement of her wealthy friends. I felt my cheeks burning, a humiliation so profound it left me breathless. I wanted to shrink, to disappear, to be anywhere but there, pinned by the pitying and amused glances of a dozen strangers. Chloe, having landed her final blow, smoothly changed the subject back to a recent property sale, leaving me to sit in the crater she had just created. I stared down at my plate, my dessert untouched. But as I risked a glance up, I saw one person at the table who wasn't smiling or looking away in embarrassment. It was Damian Vance. He was looking directly at me, not with pity, but with a sharp, focused curiosity, an expression I had never seen before. It was the look of a man who had just been given a very interesting, unexpected piece of data. I stood there, immobilized by a shame so hot it felt like a fever, as the room slowly resumed its casual chatter. The moment of my humiliation was already fading for everyone else, a fleeting bit of party drama, but for me, it was a brand on my skin. I saw my mother avoid my gaze and my father give Marcus a proud, approving nod. Anna moved to my side, her hand a warm, steady presence on my back. "We can go," she whispered, her voice tight with anger on my behalf. "No," I whispered back, surprising myself with the steel in my own voice. "I won't give him the satisfaction of seeing me run." I took a shaky breath and straightened my shoulders, determined to endure the rest of the night with my head held high, even if it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. It was then that I noticed a subtle movement near the front of the room. An older, distinguished man with salt and pepper hair and an air of quiet authority had detached himself from the main group. He wasn't looking at me or at Marcus. He was walking slowly toward the side table where my forgotten gift sat among its gaudy, expensive brethren. It was Alistair Finch, the legendary investor Marcus was so desperate to impress. He bypassed the magnum of champagne and the crystal decanter without a glance. His eyes, sharp and discerning, landed on my small wooden box. He picked it up, not casually, but with a gentleness that suggested he was handling something of immense value. He turned it over in his hands, his thumb tracing the lines of the dovetail joints I had so painstakingly cut. He opened it, and I saw him lean in slightly, as if listening to the soft whoosh of air as the lid settled back into place. Marcus, finally noticing where his prized guest's attention had landed, hurried over, his face plastered with a host's eager smile. "Alistair, so glad you're enjoying the party. Can I get you another drink?" "That's just a little something my brother brought." Mr. Finch didn't seem to hear him. He looked up from the box, his gaze scanning the room until it found me. Then, holding the box like a rare artifact, he walked directly toward me. Marcus followed, a confused and slightly irritated look now replacing his smile. Mr. Finch stopped in front of me, his eyes ignoring my brother completely. "Did you make this?" he asked, his voice not loud, but carrying a weight that made the people closest to us fall silent. I was so stunned I could only nod. "Yes, sir, I did." A genuine smile spread across Mr. Finch's face. I thought so, he said. He held it up for a better look. This is black walnut, isn't it? A magnificent piece of burled grain. And these dovetails? They're flawless. This is the work of a master, not a hobbyist. The word master hung in the air. Marcus's face went pale. Mr. Finch then turned to my brother, his smile fading slightly. You know, Marcus, he said, his voice still perfectly audible to the growing circle of onlookers, I spend my days in a world of abstract value, numbers on a screen, market projections. It's easy to forget what real tangible value is. He held up the box. This has real value. This is skill. This is patience. This is artistry. This is something you can't learn at Harvard Business School. The jab was so precise, so devastating it took my breath away. The same people who had laughed at Marcus's joke were now staring at him, their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning understanding. Mr. Finch turned his back on my brother and faced me again. I've been looking for a true craftsman to build the library for my new estate in the country, he said. I've interviewed a dozen high-profile designers, and none of them have impressed me. Their work has no soul. But this, he gestured with the box. This little box tells me everything I need to know about your standards. I would consider it an honor, Mr. Thompson, if you would take on the commission. The silence in the penthouse was no longer the respectful hush of a captive audience. It was the thick, suffocating silence of a public execution. Marcus stood frozen, his face a ghastly shade of white, the triumphant smile still etched there like a tragic mask. My mother looked from Mr. Finch to me and back again, her expression a mixture of confusion and horror, as if the very laws of her universe had just been overturned. My father, for his part, simply looked at his shoes, unable to meet anyone's gaze. The foundation of their world, built on a narrow definition of success, had just been demolished. Mr. Finch, completely oblivious to the family drama he had just ignited, or perhaps completely aware and enjoying it, continued to speak to me as if we were the only two people in the room. We can discuss the details next week, he said, handing me his personal business card. My assistant will be in touch to arrange a meeting at your workshop. I cannot wait to see more of your work. Thank you, Mr. Finch, I said, my voice steady. It will be an honor. I gave him a nod, then turned to look at my family one last time. Marcus wouldn't look at me. He was staring at the box on the table, the small, perfect thing he had dismissed, as if trying to understand how something so insignificant could have wielded so much power. Without another word, I turned and walked toward the elevator. I didn't feel triumphant or vengeful. I didn't feel the need to say, I told you so. The anger and hurt I had carried for years had simply evaporated, replaced by a quiet, profound sense of peace. My worth had never been determined by their judgment, but tonight, in the most public way imaginable, the world had finally shown them the truth. As the elevator doors closed, cutting off the view of my stunned family, I felt a sense of release. The shadow of the skyscraper was gone. I was finally standing in my own light.